All right, gotta say, Meta's really stirred things up this time. Big changes to how they're going to handle content moderation. And the internet is, well, kind of freaking out. You guys sent in a mountain of Reddit threads on this, so we're going deep on what people are saying, especially about ditching that paid fact-checking program. And all these other moves that honestly have folks scratching their heads a bit. Luckily, we've got our expert here to make sense of it all. So let's start with the elephant in the room. Fact-checking. Meta's swapping out those third-party pros for something called community notes, kind of like what Twitter's doing. And I'm seeing a lot of skepticism on Reddit, even more than usual when Meta tweets things. What is it about this change that's got people so riled up?
I think it's a couple things, honestly. First, the timing is a little, well, suspect. We're heading into a huge election year, and the idea of unverified stuff just floating around makes a lot of folks uneasy. Plus, it's not just tweaking the old system, it's a total overhaul. Handing the keys over to the community, which is a pretty big leap.
Yeah, and some folks are saying even with paid fact-checkers, Meta wasn't exactly batting 1,000. They're sharing stories about reporting stuff, clearly harmful, that just stayed up.
It speaks to a bigger issue, this feeling that Meta says one thing, but their actions not quite matching up.
Speaking of saying one thing and doing another, Meta's also pulling back on minimizing that political and social stuff in our feeds. They say it's based on what users want, but on Reddit, a lot of folks are calling shenanigans.
Yeah, I can see why people are raising an eyebrow at that one, especially with the timing right before an election. Hard not to wonder what's really going on.
Makes you think, is this really about what we want? Or is there another game being played here? And then there's the whole algorithm thing. Lots of folks think it's basically designed to push the most divisive stuff as that gets the most clicks.
Ah, yes, the good old attention economy rearing its head.
Okay, hold up. Attention economy. Was that in plain English?
Basically, it means companies like Meta, they make money by grabbing our attention. And nothing grabs attention quite like something outrageous or, infuriating.
So the more we're glued to our screens, arguing about the latest drama, the more money they make.
Pretty much.
But doesn't that kind of create a problem? If we're only seeing the stuff that gets us riled up, even if it's not true or fair, that can't be good for society.
That's the million-dollar question. Critics say this whole system creates these echo chambers where we're just surrounded by stuff that reinforces what we already believe, even if it's wrong or, kind of harmful.
So it's like, even if Meta says they want to fight misinformation, their whole business model might be working against that.
That's the tension a lot of folks are wrestling with right now.
And to make things even more interesting, Meta's moving their content moderation team from California to Texas, saying there'll be less bias there. But a lot of people on Reddit aren't buying it.
Yeah, that move's definitely fueled the fire. It just goes to show how polarized things have become. Even something like where a company's based is seen through this political lens makes it really hard to have a level-headed conversation.
Feels like everything's political now, even if it's not supposed to be. Makes me wonder, is it even possible for a company like Meta to be truly neutral these days?
That's the big question a lot of folks are asking. And honestly, it's a tough one to answer. These tech giants have so much power, every little choice they make, well, it can be interpreted in a million different ways. And those interpretations, they have real-world consequences.
Okay, so let's break down how these community notes actually work, because I'm seeing some confusion on Reddit. Some are comparing it to Twitter, which, yeah, it's had some wins, but also some not-so-wins. But it seems like Meta might be doing things a little differently, right?
Yeah, you've hit on a key point there. They're both community-driven, but Meta's really emphasizing what they're calling helpful and informative notes. That's their big thing. They're trying to design it so the notes that rise to the top are the ones that, actually give you context or evidence, not just someone ranting.
So it's less about, like, a popularity contest and more about actual substance?
Exactly. And they're doing things like giving contributors these reputation scores, which, in theory, could help weed out the bad actors, the folks just trying to stir the pot.
Sounds good on paper, but Facebook's got, what, billions of users?
Yeah.
Can a system like this really keep up with all that?
It's a valid question, and only time will tell if Meta can pull it off. They're basically betting that by harnessing all that collective knowledge from their users, they can create something more effective and scalable than just relying on paid experts.
So high risk, high reward kind of deal.
You could say that, for sure. If they get it right, it could change the game. But if it goes wrong, well, things could get messy fast.
Speaking of messy, let's talk money. Lots of folks on Reddit are saying this is all about Meta saving a buck, ditching paid fact-checkers. So they can boost those profits,
It's true that community notes are probably more cost-effective, and Meta's not exactly known for turning down a chance to, please the shareholders. But it's also worth remembering that running a fact-checking operation at that scale with paid professionals, it's a beast, it's expensive and complicated. So maybe, just maybe, they actually think community notes are better all around, better for their bottom line, and better at actually fighting misinformation.
There's actually some pushback on the idea that less political content is automatically a bad thing. Some folks are saying maybe seeing less of that stuff is good for their mental health.
That's interesting, right? It ties into this growing awareness of how social media can be, well, stressful, anxiety-inducing. So if Meta's personalization actually works and people see less stuff that triggers them, that could be a win, right?
And maybe it could even lead to better conversations online. Instead of just the same old political arguments, maybe people will actually, connect with each other, have some real discussions.
It's possible. The challenge is making sure personalization doesn't just create these echo chambers where everyone's just hearing what they already agree with.
Because then you just end up with these, isolated groups talking past each other. Doesn't really solve anything, does it?
Nope. It's a delicate balance to strike.
Speaking of balance, let's circle back to those potential downsides of community notes.
Yeah.
Because even with all the safeguards Meta's talking about, it's still a big change.
And with big change comes big risk, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the biggest concerns is bias. Even with the best intentions, communities online, they reflect the biases of their members, and that could lead to some perspectives getting amplified while others get silenced.
So even if the goal is neutral, informative notes,
Right.
the reality might be a lot messier.
Right, and then there's the whole manipulation thing.
Coordinated groups could totally game the system, couldn't they? Flood it with biased notes, downvote anything they don't like.
That's definitely a possibility Meta's going to have to watch out for. They say they'll be monitoring things, but who knows how effective that'll be in practice.
And even if they can stop the manipulation, will community notes actually work? Will they be enough to fight misinformation?
Some folks are saying it's too little too late. The damage is already done. They've lost faith in Meta to handle this.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about trust or the lack of it.
It's about Meta showing they're actually serious about combating misinformation.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit, look at the bigger picture. This whole situation with Meta, it feels like it's tapping into something deeper, like a real anxiety people have about tech and its role in our lives, especially when you think about democracy, free speech, all that.
Absolutely. These aren't just tech issues, they're societal issues with huge implications.
It's not just about whether you use Facebook or not. It's about how these platforms are shaping how we think, how we talk to each other, how we make decisions.
And who has the power to control all of that?
Whoa. Getting pretty deep here. Need to lighten the mood a bit. One Redditor actually made me laugh. They said Meta should just rename Facebook to, get this, Fact Optional Book.
Oh, that's good. Sometimes you just gotta laugh, right?
Yeah, serious stuff, but you got to find the humor in it or you'll go crazy.
Exactly. And sometimes a joke can actually spark a better conversation than a serious debate,
It's like we're at this point where we have to figure out how to live with the good and the bad of social media. Because it's not going anywhere, right? And this whole thing with Meta, it's bringing up some pretty dark comparisons. People talking about 1984, that book, super creepy, about a world where, truth is controlled and manipulated.
Yeah, I've seen those comparisons too. It's not just about, seeing a few fake news articles. It's this deeper fear that we're losing control of what's real, what's true.
And that the people in charge, the ones with the algorithms, they're the ones shaping our reality.
Exactly. And it's especially scary because, like we've been saying, people already don't trust institutions, the government, the media.
So now you add social media to the mix, and it's just like a recipe for total chaos.
It makes it so hard to even talk about these things, because there's this automatic assumption that someone's lying, someone's manipulating you.
So where do we go from here? What are people saying we should do about all this?
Well, there are a lot of ideas floating around. Some folks are saying the government needs to step in, regulate these companies because they've gotten too big, too powerful.
Others are saying it's more about giving users the tools, the education, to be able to critically think about what they're seeing online.
Yeah, there's this big push for media literacy, helping people sort fact from fiction.
And then some are saying we need to change our relationship with tech altogether. Stop chasing those clicks and likes and start focusing on, I don't know, something more meaningful.
It's a complex problem. No easy solutions. But the good news is at least people are talking about it, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of energy, a lot of people trying to figure this out.
And that's what gives me hope, honestly. The fact that we're even having this conversation, that's a good sign.
Totally. And that's what I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive. It's not about knowing all the answers. It's about asking the right questions, being willing to challenge your own beliefs.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We've covered a lot of ground here, from misinformation and bias to community solutions, from media literacy to, the existential fear of 1984. It's messy, it's complicated, but by understanding all these different perspectives, we can start to build a better, more responsible online world. So as you keep thinking about all of this, ask yourself, what role do you want to play? Because ultimately, it's up to all of us to decide what kind of online future we want. This conversation, it's just getting started.